Bears.
Winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. In our business, there is no second place.
What the hell's going on out here? Come on!
This is the opening drive. Here are your hosts, Ross Tucker and Solomon Wilcots.
Well, I am very happy to start the third hour of the opening drive here on Sirius XM NFL Radio by putting the Favre talk firmly, hopefully forever, in the rearview mirror and talk with a current member of the NFL Hall of Fame. He is live with Solomon Wilcots and I right now in studio in Midtown Manhattan. Mr. Jack Youngblood has a book coming out, Because It Was Sunday, the legend of Jack Youngblood, that everybody should order from www.youngbloodbook.com. The foreword is written by Rich Eisen, and it details Jack's career. You know, and it's funny, Jack, welcome to the show, Ross Tucker, Solomon Wilcots. Jack, I knew all about the broken leg thing, and we'll get into that. I didn't know you played in 201 straight games, man. That is beastly. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's I look back at that now and I'm going, was I smart or what? Sometimes I think that maybe I should have taken the day off, but you couldn't. You couldn't do that. Not living in my shoes.
Well, and because it was Sunday, I'm sure you can give us an idea of what the book entails, but I'm sure that kind of mindset that compelled you to be consistent week in and week out and get out there and give it your best and had something to do with this book, because I think it's an interesting title.
Well, that's exactly why why Dave Cooper and myself got together and put this together. And it's been a work of passion, really, labor of love. And it's I wanted to try and assimilate the stories and the events and the people that influenced the life and try to capture that, put it down on paper. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to have it written down. So that's part of the reasons why we put this thing together.
We're talking with Pro Football Hall of Famer Jack Youngblood, of course. Make sure you go to www.youngbloodbook.com and order a copy of one of the real studs in the history of the National Football League. You know, Jack, it's funny because I mentioned the broken leg thing, and, it's almost like the broken leg thing has taken on a life of its own and almost overshadowed what you accomplished on the field. I mean, I didn't even know about the 201 straight games because when I think Jack Youngblood, I think the guy who played with the broken leg. So let's start with that. I mean, talk about that game in particular and what exactly your injury was and how you were able to play through it. And then the second part of that is kind of just how that's had an impact on your life and how you're perceived, and if it's almost like you get tired of it at times.
Yeah, it has taken a life of its own. There's no question about that. In fact, that's part of the reason where the title of the book came up is, when everybody they keep asking and keep asking and keep asking, you have to come up with some type of a way to get through it in a hurry. I went, it's because it's Sunday. You got to go and play. And yeah, we broke the thing, and the quick story is we broke it in the Dallas divisional playoff game. Then I came back, finished that ball game against Rayfield Wright and Roger, and made it to the championship game, and had to go to Tampa, and went down to Tampa and shut them out, which put us in Super Bowl 14. And then 2 weeks later, I continued to play and tried to take one away from Terry.
Yeah, you played the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's how I was talking. I grew up in Los Angeles rooting for the L.A. Rams at that time, with a great Rams team you guys had. I was waxing poetically during our first hour of the show how you guys sort of in the 70s, you dominated the NFC West division. The 49ers were an afterthought in those days. They later in the 80s took over control of the division, but you guys won it in the 70s as many times as they won it in the 80s. Just talk about that golden age and that era, how good your team was, and finally making it to that Super Bowl where you played with a broken leg against a great Pittsburgh Steelers team.
You know, Carl Rosenblum, when he made the deal for the franchise back in 1972, he brought in Chuck Knox, and Chuck brought in a great staff, and they put together some good players. I mean, we had a nucleus of players through the 70s that stayed together and played together. The one thing we didn't have was we never could have put our finger on that one quarterback. I mean, we had some good ones, but for whatever reason, it seemed as though that might have been the weak place on the football team.
We're talking with Jack Youngblood, of course, Pro Football Hall of Famer. He's got a new book coming out, Because It Was Sunday, which is an awesome title for a book, The Legend of Jack Youngblood. Make sure you go to www.youngbloodbook.com. What I love about books like this, Jack, are, we can look up your stats and we know the 14 years and we know, about the broken leg and how good the Rams were, but the little tidbits, one that jumped out to me was that here you lived right near Tallahassee and Florida State declined to sign you. And evidently, was Parcells the person that was working at Florida State at the time that didn't decline to offer you a scholarship?
Well, that was, the story that I got, later after I had gone to University of Florida was that Parcells came over. Actually, Parcells was still with Army. And he had some friends at Florida State, and you know how coaches were doing back in the day, in the 60s and 70s. They did a lot of things during the offseason to try to make up a few bucks. So Bill was scouting all the little schools around South Georgia, South Alabama, North Florida, and he'd come by our practice. Of course, I didn't know that. Nobody ever, pointed out, here's a college scout. And, he went back and told Coach Peterson that, there was a couple of kids over there on that Monticello, that Jefferson County team that can play at the next level. And, Peterson said, well, what about that big, tall, skinny kid? And Bill said, Coach, he'll never play college football. so Bill, that scratched me off the list, I guess. And thank goodness for a baseball coach out of the University of Florida who the story is, again, he had one and only one scholarship to finish out that year's class. And he came up to North Florida, watched us win watched my little football team in Jefferson County win the championship game, and he offered me the scholarship, and that was the only scholarship that I had offered.
Wow.
Well,
yeah.
Jack, if it's any consolation, Parcells cut me once as well. Clearly, the guy knows nothing about football.
Something's wrong with his eye. I'm telling you. I mean, it's hilarious, and I love to see him at some social event now because we'll spot each other across the room, and he'll hold court. He'll stop what he's doing and come over and tell that story.
Oh, he tells the story himself.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, sometimes, you know what, Jack, you just got to admit, I missed on a few, and you would be one of them. There's no doubt about that. History has proven you to be right.
He was probably right about me.
No.
Well, Jack, talk about Los Angeles right now because, as Sally said, he's kind of waxing poetic about the L.A. Rams. And what's amazing to me, Jack, is we get so many callers that are big-time Rams fans, and most of the reason for that is because of what happened with them in the 70s when you were there and watching the late game. I mean, and a lot of them, Jack, are from the East Coast. Talk about how the L.A. Rams sort of became, one of the 5 or 6 teams that had a national following.
It really did. And I think it all boils down to the franchise. If you've got a good franchise in Los Angeles, you're going to have a full house. People will support you. People will be fanatic about it. I mean, we've seen that with the Lakers. We saw it in the 60s and 70s with the Rams. I don't, and like you were saying, LA is a melting pot, and you'll get, if you bring Green Bay or you bring Detroit to town, you're going to have half of stadium that's going to be, they're going to go for and have the green and gold on, or the silver and blue, rather than the gold and blue with the Rams. I mean, that's the way Los Angeles is.
That's right. There are a lot of people in Los Angeles from all over the country. And Pittsburgh come to town. I remember we came back and we played. We were playing the Chargers, and I remember playing the Raiders in the Coliseum, and half the stadium be our team.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But they live in the Los Angeles area, and Pittsburgh has, like, even the Steelers have their own little club. And as you well know, the Cowboys used to practice, Jack, in Thousand Oaks. So
right up the road, yeah.
Cowboys got plenty of fans there in the Los Angeles area.
I know. I ran into too many of them when I
bet you did, didn't you? I bet.
Them and the Pittsburgh and the Steelers fans.
Yeah, I bet you did. And, yeah, what a great time, and we enjoy having you on the show, and obviously to promote your book. I just want to get your thoughts on some of the things that you're seeing in the National Football League right now. We were talking about it earlier. There's more passing than you ever have seen in the 92-year history of our league. They're throwing the ball at an alarming rate. Just kind of give us an idea of why defenses can't seem to be able to stop offenses from throwing the ball. I know you can't do the head slap anymore on offensive linemen. You can't touch the quarterback. DBs can't hit receivers. Jack Tatum and guys that you play with, Nolan Cromwell, you could blow a receiver up over the middle. You can't even do that anymore. Just give us your thoughts on why offenses are so good now at throwing the ball, and why offensive lines are even better at protecting their quarterbacks.
Well, it is amazing. Sometimes we overcorrect when we try to move the marker, and I think the league is somewhat overcorrected in this protection thing, especially with the receivers. I mean, you can't. I don't understand why you can't. You get, if you can touch them within 5 yards, you should be able to take them off of their route. That's we used to call it. Reroute them. I mean, completely reroute them. But they're so strict on those quarterbacks and the wide receivers. It's a little bit overboard, I think. And then the offensive linemen, I mean, my goodness, they line up foot to foot, and they're all 320 pounds, and they could look like a bunch of bulldozers out there. And to try to get around that bunch, it's awfully hard to do. You've got to be quick.
We're talking with Jack Youngblood. Make sure you check out his book when you get an opportunity. Because It Was Sunday, The Legend of Jack Youngblood, www.youngbloodbook.com. Jack, what do you think about the fact that L.A. doesn't have a team? It's got to be a little weird for you that here you played for the L.A. Rams and there's no such thing as the L.A. Rams anymore.
It is rather strange, and it has been since they moved to St. Louis, that the Los Angeles Rams, we are now I'm not sure where we are. And I'm not sure, who to look to anymore, because the organization basically does not recognize the past, the legacy that we established there in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, from our perspective. But I think that Los Angeles, I'm sure the commissioner and the ownership want to have a new franchise in LA. I don't think a moved franchise, a San Diego or a Minnesota, somebody going into that market, is going to do as well as a, expansion team.
Yeah,
exactly.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, you mean the Rams that moved to St. Louis, that was owned by Georgia Frontier. She was the late wife of Carol Rosenblum. who had owned the team when you had played there, and they moved from Los Angeles to St. Louis. That team has since been sold. Just to give an update, Stan Kroenke is now its new owner. They're under new management, new ownership. That the old Rams, the great Rams like yourself, Pat Hayton, Lawrence McCutcheon, Fred Dryers, a lot of great players that played on that team, that there's no affiliation with the current Rams team that now resides in St. Louis?
No.
Wow.
I don't mean to, to try and despair the
Sure.
But no, there really isn't. They do not look at us as though we are, their history. And it is just kind of.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't understand that, because we are. And, I mean, you can't change the past. You may ignore us.
Wow.
But that's all right, too. Today is, more important than yesterday.
Well, you guys had great runs. There was no doubt about it.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Better part of a decade under, as you mentioned, Chuck Knox, Ray Malavasi. You guys had some real great teams. Great memories for people like myself who grew up in the Los Angeles areas. If we could keep the Vikings from blocking a kick or a punt, as you well know, so many of those NFC Championship games ended that way. Where it broke my heart a number of days.
My goodness, didn't it? And then one of those, I think it was 76 in the Mud Bowl.
That's right. It was just rainy and muddy, and goodness.
Bobby Lee beat us.
That was was that a 6-3 ball game or a 9-6?
14-7.
14-7 was was the final score. You remember it. Look at that. You got great memory there, Jack.
Hey, Jack. I know we've taken up enough of your time. I'm just checking out. What is your Twitter handle? Is it @theblood85?
At the blood 85. Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm looking. I saw you tweeted this about Solomon and I, and I'm just looking at my Twitter handle, Jack. And somebody said, this is from Michael Shima. I mean, this might be the coolest thing I've ever heard somebody say. Really short tweet to me. Youngblood is the reason I played football as a kid. Period. That's pretty cool, Jack.
That is cool. That is cool. That is too cool.
Hey, well, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it, and we'll make sure to hopefully check out the book and send a lot of people out there to www.youngbloodbook.com. There's some great stuff in there. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack.
There he is, Jack Youngblood. Boy, he just sounds like a man's man.
John Wayne of football.
I mean,
great voice, great character, just a truly great man. And I tell you right now, the Rams organization, where they're at right now, you want guys like this in the building. You want guys like this. You want players associating with guys like a Jack Youngblood. And in my mind, I think there's always a role for high-character people who have been there, who have represented your organization, to keep them around for young players today. If you walk through the building with the St. Louis Rams and say, hey, how many of you heard of a guy named Jack Youngblood? Many of them would look around and say, but they should know about Jack Youngblood. In my mind, to me, the Rams doing themselves a disservice not to have a guy like him around. He represents everything that's right about football, about what football can do for you. I think that story with him and Bill Parcells, and he had the one scholarship, the one opportunity, and how this sport, this game, can turn a life around and set you on the road to doing some great things and affecting the lives of many other in a very positive way. This is the kind of guy you want to keep around the game, want to keep around your organization.
Well, and how about just some of these quotes about Jack Youngblood? This is from Roger Staubach. I would have to give Youngblood the vote as the best defensive player I ever competed against. Dan Dierdorf. Youngblood is by far the best defensive end I've ever faced, and maybe the best all-around end in football. Rayfield Wright. I'd have to say Jack Youngblood was the toughest I ever faced. I mean, even Jared Allen said he played a whole game with a broken leg. I mean, think about that. How much of a badass was Jack Youngblood? I'll tell you, he was a serious bad. I'll tell you this much. We're going to take a break, and I got to regroup because I think I'm pretty tough, and I think I'm a man. I don't know, Sally. I'm not a man. I don't know. I don't measure up to that guy. He broke just about every way.
Yeah, he played in the championship game. He entered the game with a broken leg. He broke his leg the week before. Not like he broke it and stayed on the field. He broke it, stayed on the field, and then played 2 more postseason games on that same broken leg.
I mean, I'd pay money just to get that guy's voice. That guy is awesome.
Yeah, he's John
I love
Wayne,
that guy.
That's the Duke.
That is the Duke. Let's talk Jack Youngblood and more. 877 NFL Kick.